everybody. Welcome to the Talking Disney podcast. This is the podcast where every month or maybe more, we talk about one of the films in the Disney canon of films, and we let the random number generator determine what we are going to talk about. And we are down to like our final 12, which is kind of crazy.
It's crazy.
Out of the 58. I know. Unbelievable. And I'm filming Rachel Wagner. Stanford is here.
Hey.
Yes, and if you're interested, we have a playlist with all of the films that we have talked about for Talking Disney. We've done some bonuses like the Goofy movie and things like that. But yeah, we're nearing that finish line.
You know, we're just time flies.
Yeah. Yes, and today we are doing the final package film.
Yes.
We've reviewed all the package films and
saving the best for last. The package films.
The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And we've now finished 2 eras. We finished 3, because we've done the revival, I guess, era, the most recent era. We've done the Renaissance era. We finished all of those films. Yeah. And we have done now the package
films. Yep.
Yeah. So it's been pretty fun, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's fun to kind of end this era on Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
I agree. I just think the random number generator yet again. Nice work for us or by us.
Yeah. And so they had done, like, in Melody Time had done basically 2 stories. They have more than 2 on Melody Time, but the big stories are your Tall Tales, Pecos Bill and Johnny Appleseed. And in this one, they kind of take the same approach. It's just 2 stories talking about the Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, so an American folktale. And then they have Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, which is a British folktale.
I've always thought it was so interesting that they got, an American story and then it was this British story. And strangely, I think kind of works, mm-hmm. Even though they're very different types of stories.
Yeah, I think that they are both kind of similar in their tones, I think.
Yeah.
And their sort of weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
And their animation certainly has a lot of similarities, but yeah, and there's a lot of differences too, like obviously in Wind in the Willows, you have anthropomorphic characters, and in Legend of Sleepy Hollow, you don't.
Yeah.
And so, there's differences, but I still think that they feel like a good match, I think, for this
I do
type
too.
of thing.
I think it's entertaining. Yeah. I think that this is such a focus on entertainment, and there's never really a dull moment, given that both stories, particularly I think the Wind in the Willows. In fact, I often wish that the Wind in the Willows could have had like a full length version, just because I love the book so much.
I was going to ask you, if one of these was turned into a feature film, which one would you pick?
Oh, I'd want the Wind in the Willows. Yeah. Well, how about you?
I don't know, actually. I think I might get a little tired of the shtick in Wind in the Willows in a full-length film, whereas I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I would be curious on sort of like a Laika type adaptation of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a shame that our culture now doesn't really have much love for the extended short, I guess is what you'd call it. I don't know. Because there are so many stories that feel too long for a featurette, I guess is what you'd call it, because it's too long for a feature film, but longer than the typical short.
Yes.
I mean, you saw when they did Olaf's Frozen Adventure and people lost their mind.
People went like, there's all these haters. And I'm like, let's hate having fun animation on the screen for 20 minutes.
That's what I thought.
Rather than, I mean, I get the, kind of the Frozen fatigue, but still, that bugged me. I was like, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Rather than, just hate it.
Because they used to have longer shorts in front of animated films, like Mickey's Christmas Carol,
Yeah,
for instance, or
exactly. The
Mickey and the
Prince and
Three
yeah,
Musketeers.
the Prince and the Pauper.
It's in the Popper, yep. And so I don't know, there's just not much of a palette for these sort of mid-length films
Yeah.
these days. And I've said it a lot of times about Sundance that there are many films that you watch at Sundance and you think this would have been way better as a short when
Mm-hmm.
they try to extend it to feature length and you got
Yeah.
that like quirky kind of indie vibe for
Yeah.
over 2 hours. It's like
Yeah. I
no
think with The
more.
Wind in the Willows, it's been a while since I've read the book. So, but I
Mm-hmm.
just remember. So, this Disney telling of it is pretty focused on kind of Toad, clearly.
Yeah.
But I just remember there's lots of. It seems like there was lots of other parts of it with Ratty and Molly and it's just so British and so
Yeah.
charming. And
I've heard that.
maybe it would have been a problem to try to stretch it
Mhm.
out, but I still kind of felt like I wanted to
Yeah.
spend a little more time with them, in the English
I've
countryside.
heard yeah, I've heard that it's not very true to the book.
Yeah, there's they chose to focus kind of on one component and then made some modifications to it. Yet overall, I think it works, but yeah, it's not like it's a really true
Mhm.
adaptation. It's also been forever since I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and
Yeah.
I don't know how true this Disney I think it's pretty
Yeah.
close, but probably
Mhm.
some
Well,
changes were made.
I mean, that Legend of Sleepy Hollow must have terrified you as a child. No.
Oh, absolutely, because I mean, it's one of those things that that final sequence, which I know we'll get to, is so funny yet so scary.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
what's so brilliant about it. But yeah, oh yeah, scared. Yeah, I mean, absolutely half to death, disturbed,
It's like
for
your
a
well, for
week.
me, it was Return to Oz. That was the
Oh,
scariest moment of my childhood. It's like,
horrifying.
but yeah, I I don't have many memories of watching this as a child, but I do remember going on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride,
Well, yeah,
and that's still a favorite of mine.
me too. And I think that's maybe where some of my love for the Mr. Toad portion of this package film is because
Yeah.
of I just adore that dark ride so much at Disneyland.
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I mean,
Oh,
I
me
feel
too.
bad that they don't have it at Disney World anymore.
I know. I think a lot of Disney fans do too.
Like, I
uh,
don't understand. They have so much space. Like, why, if they have room to have 2 Dumbos,
you
why can't
know,
they have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride
it got replaced with the Winnie
or
the
Winnie
Pooh
the
ride,
Pooh? But it just seems
and
like they'd have enough space.
oh, agreed. And just whatever executive is making these decisions, I mean, and maybe the Winnie the Pooh ride is getting more riders than Mr. Toad's Wild
Yeah,
Ride, but I think it's a shame.
I'm in favor of having Winnie the Pooh. Why can't we
Why
have
can't we have
both?
both? Because
I mean,
it says there's room.
yeah. I mean, I guess Fantasyland is a little crowded, but again, if you have room for 2
Still,
Dumbos and the whole
they
like,
made a big addition,
yeah,
to their Fantasyland
stick it
there,
right
and
next to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train,
yeah,
and it would be perfect. You can lessen the load on that ride,
yeah.
and because you have to wait like 2.5
No,
hours.
no complaints from me. I love what they did at Disneyland too, because you know you probably have seen all this, but Disneyland remodeled their Fantasyland in the 80s,
Mhm.
from the original one that was,
Yeah.
from 1955. And they put up all these really charming facades. So at Disneyland, the exterior of the ride is Toad Hall.
Right.
And, which
Yeah, I love that.
I love that so much. In Disneyland Paris, they don't have a Mr. Toad ride either, but however, they have a Toad Hall, and it's a British food where like you get fish and chips there and
Oh.
stuff, which is just and then the interior. It's not so much decor. I mean, it's not so much decorated like Toad Hall, but
Uh-huh.
it's got pictures of Mr. Toad like doing all this action stuff, like at the beginning of the Mr. Toad portion in the
Yeah.
film, how he's climbing a mountain and doing all that stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
I never want to leave. It's like, can I just stay here?
Yeah, I
I
wonder
love it
if
so much.
after they finish Snow White, if they will move on to do a refurb on they've been doing all the sort of the dark rides
They've
in
been plussing
Disneyland.
these dark rides, and
Yeah,
they're great. Like what they
yeah,
did, Peter Pan is terrific. Alice in Wonderland is great. How they've added
yeah.
some, they've added some projection sequences or scenes,
I
eh,
was nervous about that. I was like, "Oh, I
I
don't
think a lot of
know,"
people were,
but
but they're great.
they're really good.
They
Especially the Alice was really great. I don't always go on Peter Pan because it's just such a line.
That line is hard. It's
So
you have to really yeah, it's a long line, but
so because I don't
it's
think
one
it's
of
that
my
much better.
favorites.
I don't think it's that much better than Snow White or Pinocchio, so I'll just go on those instead.
Yeah,
I
you
can
get
walk
this.
on those.
Those are walk-ons, yeah. I'm excited for that Snow White. That
I
looks really
know, me
cool.
too. Me too.
But I'm
I
with you. I hope that Mr. Toad gets some love. That would be really awesome.
uh And of course, in the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, they have him go to hell, which is crazy.
Well, yeah, are you feeling so I read this little article about this. Sorry to digress too much on this,
No.
yeah, that whoever came up with this idea, it's a morality tale. Whereas, like you're a bad driver and you destroy property and you therefore you go to hell. So it's like just scaring
It's
little
harsh,
kids into
harsh sentence.
yeah, being don't be a bad driver.
Oh. Well, the movie starts off and we are introduced to the library. We have Basil Rathbone
Oh, I
and
love Basil Rathbone's narration in this so much. It was such a
I'm a
great choice.
yeah, I'm a big fan of him. What was it last year? Or I can't remember. I first saw my first Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes
Oh,
movie,
yeah. Oh, cool.
and I love the Jeremy Brett ones. That do you ever see those that were on PBS? Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. Those were
It's
so iconic too,
yeah,
and so good.
and so I have very high standards because in that I have a ton of nostalgia for watching those with my dad. It's
Yeah.
he loves them, and so I thought I don't know, and I loved it. I thought he was phenomenal,
Yeah,
so great.
he's so good.
Yeah, and so he says that the most fabulous character in English literature is J. Thaddeus Toad. And so Wind and the Willows he introduces, and originally they were planning on this being a feature, and they worked on it for quite a while. But then the creditors actually said they put a halt on working on features and said we are only going to allow shorts. So at least that's what I read. And so then they worked on it some more, but then it ended up getting kind of shelved and it resumed after in 1946 after the war, and that's when Frank Thomas was put on the project
Okay.
after he came back from serving in the war, and James Alger was the director. So then they worked on it, and it was shortened to the length of 25 minutes. And so it says here Frank Thomas was assigned to direct additional footage for Wind in the Willows alongside James Alger in hopes of salvaging the project. Under Walt's strict orders, the film was shortened down to a length of 25 minutes. So then, and then The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was directed by Jack Kinney and Clyde Geronimi.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the anthropomorphic projects one of the first ones that they did. And what do you feel? Do you like anthropomorphic
Oh, I
projects?
love them. Love them. I mean, I think too. I feel very spoiled because we get Wind in the Willows portion of this package film.
Mhm.
I adore Robin Hood from Disney's Robin Hood from 1973. Maybe
I
not
can't wait to talk
necessarily
about that.
the best film, but the character designs are just so delightful, so much fun. And then for modern day Zootopia, I
Mhm.
can't get enough of that. I love it. What's your take on it? What do you think?
I really enjoy. I mean, I love Great Mouse Detective as
Oh my
well.
goodness. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and so I really enjoy it. I think it's very creative, and I also have very fond memories of, particularly The Jungle Book and Robin Hood, and of watching those with my dad,
Yeah.
and those are his two favorites: is Robin Hood and Jungle Book,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Jungle Book isn't totally anthropomorphic, but like they don't wear clothes and
some,
stuff.
I mean, there's
Yeah. They
yeah,
talk and stuff.
yeah, and
Uh,
the way they move, and
so it starts out with the rat and mole, and they're called to Toad Hall. And rat and mole we would then see again in the Mickey's Christmas Carol
yeah, that's right.
as
They're in
the
Mickey's Christmas Carol. That's fun.
benefactors. So then you have McBadger, who's going
Hmm.
over the finances, and you have it's interesting because the human characters, because this is the only one I think of the anthropomorphic stories that has humans.
Yeah, exactly. Like the policeman and
I mean, I guess Great Mouse Enchanted
Winky.
does also,
Yeah, that's true.
but just as
Those,
shadows.
but you're right. Whereas in this one, they're cohabitating. I
Right.
mean, it's just
Yeah.
like
But like the humans are just like the creditors, the police officers, the judge, things.
and Winky,
And
Mr. Winky,
yeah,
the
that's right.
bartender.
And so McBadger is going over the finances, and there's all this destruction that is having to be paid for because Mr. Toad is obsessed with riding his gypsy cart, they called it. The canary yellow gypsy cart with a horse named Cyril. And he causes all this damage. And that's when we get the Merrily song.
Oh,
And
which I
merrily on
love.
our way to nowhere at
To
all.
Nowhere in particular. Which is the right song they played throughout much of the ride at
Yeah.
Disneyland too. I think that's another reason why I love it so much.
Well, and
Yeah.
you must also relate a little bit to Toad because
Well, hello, motor car.
our listeners might not know that Stanford has a bit of a mania for motor cars himself.
Yes. Guilty.
Yeah, that is probably our biggest difference as friends because I hate cars. I hate dealing with cars.
And I totally relate how Mr. Toad, when he sees his that first car,
Yeah, his
how
eyes
his
get
eyes,
buggy.
get those rings. I love that because, like, yeah, that's how it feels. I don't want to go
Yeah,
steal one, like
right. Um,
or trade,
so
trade in my house.
yeah, so Toad, he trades in the Toad Hall for a motor car because he has a new mania, and they lock him up, and
His friends try to lock him up. They're like trying to protect himself, or protect him from himself, right?
yeah, and the
He
old
sneaks out.
tie the sheets down the to escape kind of thing. It was really
Yeah,
fun.
he escapes from Toad Hall.
Yeah, and I really like the way they have the newspaper reels that
Oh, I
come
love
through.
that
Yeah,
too. Really concise storytelling, I think, which is one of the things that really impresses me about both of these films,
yeah,
both of these shorts. Yeah, and they just use a lot of devices, as you said, like the newspaper stuff and different things, which really keep the plot moving. And Mr. Toad's, it's really just focused on action, I think. I mean, it just doesn't,
mhm.
and interesting, but I guess maybe that's not the right way to say it, but just the story moves so efficiently, and the settings are kind of weird, but they work. I mean,
Well,
like
one
there's
thing,
this whole in court, like what in the
yeah,
world?
is the one of the things I really like is that everything is kept to scale. Like
Yes,
most anthropomorphic stuff, they're kind of all about the same size.
I
Like for
love
instance,
that
in
too.
Robin Hood, Miss Clucky is basically the same size as a bear
Yeah,
and
she's like the world's
fox.
largest chicken,
Yeah.
whatever she is.
Whereas
Yeah,
in here, they keep Rat and Toad very small,
yeah,
and
they're
like
small.
when they're on the stand, you see that they're about the size of the book, and of
Yeah,
course the horse is very big, which is
I
kind of
love that the
nutty.
horse is so big. Yeah, it's nutty, but I think it adds to the kind of delight of it because I just think this is the most random scene, and I just love it.
Yeah. So Toad decides to be his own defense, and he calls Cyril the horse. And I like that when Cyril is testifying, there's sort of like a fisheye lens kind of a thing.
Yes,
And you have the whole, you won't believe it. I won't believe it. uh-huh. And the way he's walking on just the two legs is so strange.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's bonkers.
Bonkers, yeah, in a good
But I
way.
love
I
it.
enjoy it. Yeah.
I just love it.
And so he didn't really technically steal the motor card. He really did
Traded the
trade
deed.
Toad Hall.
But
And
Mr.
yeah,
Winky, who's a jerk,
Mr.
lies, right?
Winky,
And
the
Toad goes to
witness,
jail.
he says he tried to sell him the stolen motor card instead of being the witness. And Mr. Winky is like that classic kind of 1920s speakeasy kind of character.
Yes.
Like in that game in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah. Tapper.
Tapper, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Is that the name of the game? Is it Tapper?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And so you get a nice Christmas scene in this movie, which made me happy. I love that.
Yeah. Whereas their friends are missing Mr. Toad because he's in
Yeah,
jail.
at Rat and Mole's house, and they have the Christmas tree and the Christmas, and he says it's one spot away from Christmas cheer. And you see Toad in the tower, alone with the memories of his wasted life.
And he's got a ball and chain attached to
Right.
him. Yeah.
And Cyril dresses as his grandmother.
Right. Who walks in again on 2 feet in a dress.
Yeah. And so then they have this escape, and they says the escape is the new mania. And he even steals a train at one point.
And again,
Yeah.
a pretty fun action scene.
Yeah, it really is. It's
Yeah.
good. Then McBadger sees that the weasels are destroying Toad Hall and Mr. Winky, their leader. So then we get the action scene of Toad and friends trying to get the deed away from Mr. Winky.
Yeah, they have to sneak in to Toad Hall to try to find the deed.
Yeah.
And I love how they, go into that kind of through that tunnel, through that secret entrance.
Yeah.
And that kind of young Frankenstein entrance, and then that wall. And then I think the weasels are such good villains.
Yeah.
Such good henchmen.
I think so too.
The weasels get used in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They're Judge Doom's
Oh yeah, you're right.
henchmen, and they're good. I think they're really good.
Well, and this is another example of heavy drinking in Disney. If we ever do our Disney intoxication episode, this will be featured.
This will be up there.
They're drinking a lot.
Yeah.
And so everything turns out great, and we get Auld Lang Syne to the new year and a new Toad, and he's there flying airplanes.
Yeah, now he's got a new mania. He and Cyril are flying in a biplane.
Yeah, and it just ends. Don't we all envy him a bit?
Yeah. Such a good wrap up. Just to backtrack just a touch, Rachel, I am always impressed about that scene in Toad Hall where they're trying to find the deed. I think that it's such a classic comedic scene. I mean, it's exciting, but it's more, I think, kind of played for laughs.
Yeah.
And the comedy in it is so good. I don't even know quite what to compare it to other than, like kind of like a live action movie and almost like a screwball comedy type of thing, where there's just so much going on at once. And anyway, I always am impressed by it. Yeah. And this watching was no exception.
Yeah, it's really good. I really enjoy it too. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting animation throughout. Like you said, the movement, the way it uses shadows and colors, and at certain points, kind of almost a fisheye type lens perspective, so it's a really fun. You get to go underwater at a certain point. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, they pack in. I think they pack in a lot in 25 minutes. Again, even though the source material gets a little modified, maybe a little skewered, but it's still is so charming, and the characters are so great. One other note, which I noticed on this watching too, Rachel, and again, sorry, this is the classic movie nerd coming out, but and I had never noticed this before, but I had just recently watched, because I'm watching all these old musicals for one of my movie watching projects this year is I'm watching 50 musicals that TCM put in a viewing guide, kind of like a history of the Hollywood musical. So right now there's a couple of Fred Astaire Ginger Roger movies, from the 1930s, and these films, one of the standard character actors they use is this guy named Eric. I'm probably going to skewer his name, Blore, B as in Bravo, Lore, Eric Blore, and he plays the butler. He's just a character actor in these films, right? And excuse me, it's almost like he's the same character, although he's not. They're always have different names and kind of different backgrounds or whatever. But Eric Blore was they used him as the voice of Mr. Toad.
Oh, interesting.
Which was so fun, just to make that connection, because he's such a fun comedic actor in these kind of films from the 30s. That it's fun to see that he was in that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, thanks for letting me digress.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's a great voice cast in general. I really enjoy everybody. And you have, of course, Basil Rathbone, and the whole cast does a really great job. So then we have The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And so I do really enjoy this. I think this is a great way to introduce your kids to ghost stories and some of those elements without it being like too scary.
I agree.
And I always appreciate that about Disney, is I feel like there is a Disney movie for every single kind of genre in movie, whether it's sci-fi or fantasy or satire or all the different genres. There's something for everybody. I think you can give your kids a pretty good little lesson of the types on filmmaking by even just showing them films from the canon. And so I appreciate that this is there, because I think it's a good way to kind of let kids dip their toes into that type of storytelling if they really like it and excites their imagination. And
yes,
then they can know, and you can kind of guide them to other things. I mean, I do Disney Scares Month on my channel every October, and there really are more Disney scary movies than you would think. And especially
absolutely.
There's some really good sort of scary DCOMs, in my opinion. Like things like Halloween Town is really charming. And
is that the one with Debbie Reynolds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
very charming. And I think better than Hocus Pocus, which I think is super overrated.
Wouldn't be hard.
I think it's very overrated. It's treated as this beloved classic, and I don't understand it. Yeah. But of course, then you have Nightmare Before Christmas, and not Disney, but you have a Corpse Bride and Frankenweenie, and I love Toy Story of Terror. That
I do too. That's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And so there's really quite a bit that if your kid likes that kind of stuff, then you can kind of guide them in that way. And so I like that about this. Thing I don't like, and this is just personal taste, it's nothing wrong with it, I do not like that kind of doo-wop Andrews Sisters kind of music.
Yeah.
Like at that kind of singing, I don't care for it.
Yeah.
And I, of course, Bing Crosby's incredible, and I wish it was just him and not all of the
it's interesting because it's this felt like, and I guess same in some ways with Mr. Toad too, it's like they're taking these classic stories and really almost putting a modern spin on them, even though they didn't change the setting per se. Here they're using Bing Crosby, who's just like at the peak of his popularity, and really turning it into kind of a popular kind of piece or thing for him. I'm with you. I think it's interesting choice,
because this is not this has less dialogue than Wind in the Willows one. It's basically it's
Bing Crosby.
Yeah, it's a song, it's a play, a poem, kind of more of an experience. And it's just like I said, personal taste. I just don't really love that kind of music from the 40s.
Yeah.
And but Bing Crosby is really good. And yeah, what do you think about Ichabod as a character?
Well, I I don't like him very much, and I think and
Either.
and I think that helps because again, as I recall, it's a pretty this is a pretty accurate. I mean, accurate meaning that it's a pretty good representation of how he's presented in the book, and he's not to me he's not a likable character really at all.
No, I
Uh,
mean he's spare the rod, spoil the child.
yeah,
He is very greedy. He's
yes,
all he cares about is Katrina's
yeah,
fortune, and
right.
he
Very
dreams.
self-absorbed. Always just his head's always in the book, but it's not like Belle,
No,
who's smart and wonderful.
yeah,
He's just into himself. I mean, it's just all
yeah,
about
like
him.
they literally animate him wishing her father was dead
Yeah,
so that he could. He's like that old man can't live forever. What?
exactly. And he's just, even though he's just a stick, he's a glutton. Anyway, I
And
just
the
yeah,
only reason he stays on good terms with his students is so he can eat the mother's
yeah,
food,
exactly.
the cooking.
So he's just yeah, he's not very likable. So I guess it kind of makes you feel less bad for him with his fate that's
Hmm.
coming.
Yeah,
That's at least how I've
I
interpreted it
agree.
more as an adult. Like you kind of don't care what happens
Yeah,
to him.
but they tell
That's
you,
heartless, I know, but
yeah, they tell you that Ichabod is super superstitious at the
yeah.
beginning, and we get that Ichabod song, Ichabod, Ichabod Crane, Ichabod, and
Yeah, your
uh,
favorite.
yeah. Uh, so he leads the choral society, and they're terrible. But evidently, you see him. The women like are have like passed out on the floor, and he is eating the salad.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's not cool.
and you've got the Sleepy Hollow Boys led by Brom Bones is the leader.
Yes.
And do you think that Brom Bones was a kind of a precursor to Gaston?
Oh, absolutely. I think I mean, he's very Gaston like, although I don't dislike him as much because I just dislike Ichabod so
Hmm.
much,
Yeah.
Even though I feel like Brom Bones in his big song and stuff is a bully. And are we to assume that Brom Bones is also the Headless Horseman? I mean, I
Yes,
kind of
I think
always
so. Yeah.
I always have, and I don't know if that's ever divulged. I can't remember if that's divulged in the book, uh, or if it's just kind of a safe assumption. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I just clearly that they were both dueling it out for the woman. But I mixed feelings about Brom. I don't think he's nearly as awful as Gaston, but then it just is tempered because Ichabod is so horrible.
Hmm.
What do you think
Yeah.
about him?
No, I mean I agree. I mean he's obviously not as bad because he gets the girl in the end, which is
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
and they look happy together. You
Yeah.
know?
So then we get introduced to Katrina, and we get our Katrina song
Yeah,
from and this, of course, being Crosby, and it's once you have met that little that little coquette Katrina. You won't forget Katrina, but nobody yet has ever upset Katrina, the cute coquette Katrina. You can do more with Margaret or Helena or Anne or Angelina, but Katrina will kiss and run to her romance is fun, with always another one to start. And then when you have met that little coquette Katrina, you've lost your heart. But I think that I was born in the wrong era because they describe Katrina Van Tassel as a blooming lass, plump as a partridge, ripe, melting, and rosy cheeks.
Katrina. Yeah.
A blooming lass, plump as a partridge. That's a compliment. Like, man. I was born in the wrong era.
Rage.
But he's so smitten with Katrina that he just lets the kids go crazy. The kids are behaving terribly, and he
Oh,
just doesn't even care. He's got
doesn't
his
he
feet up.
care? It's so weird.
And
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean,
when he imagines all of her money.
yes. And again, it's just like, dude, he's
Yeah.
not a noble, good person.
Yeah. And then we have the Halloween romp, and
Yes.
she invites Ichabod. And I don't know if it's true or not, but for some reason, I felt like that Halloween wasn't as big a deal back in the 40s as it is now. Like, that's more of a.
You know, that's a really good point.
For some reason, I thought that Halloween kind of became more popular in the 50s at
Uh-huh.
post war, like baby boomer kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Excellent point. I don't know either. We'll need to. Yeah, I don't know.
But obviously, at least it was a holiday for adults. Maybe it was trick or treating is more
Okay.
what. I don't know that for a fact, but might be true. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Sounds
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see here. I'm gonna look. I'm just checking if I see anything on Wikipedia. No, I guess it was earlier than that. So maybe I'm wrong. The first use of trick or treating in the U.S. was in 1934.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wrong. It sounded good though, didn't it?
Oh, for sure.
um, but anyway, so that was almost a little surprise to hear Halloween romp. She,
Yeah. Yeah. And to have a Halloween party, none of them were dressed up, right? As I recall. But
no,
it was just a dance, right?
yeah,
More just kind of like a social. Yeah.
and they have tons of. It's pretty much there's a good probably 4 or 5 minutes where it's just dancing,
Yes.
and then you get the Headless Horseman song.
Yes. Where Brahms trying to scare Ichabod, right?
Mm-hmm.
About this thing that happens on Halloween.
Yeah, he tells it's like a legend.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think that's a fun song. And again, an effective use of Bing Crosby and great animation as Brahms telling his tale and Ichabod's just absolutely freaking out.
yeah, it's really good. And he says, "Oh, when the spooks have a midnight jamboree, they break it up with fiendish glee. Ghosts are bad, but the one that's cursed is the Headless Horseman. He's the worst. That's right. He's a fright on Halloween night."
Yeah, so good.
So yeah, that's really fun. So then when it just really clips along from like the dancing
It does.
through the end.
And then it's just like, yeah, the movie it's just it goes full speed ahead till the very end.
Mm-hmm. And I think what makes it work is not only do you have the great animation and the truly scary kind of sequences, but they're broken up by these scenes of sort of Ichabod looking terrified and silly,
Yeah.
and I think that helps.
And they really play, I think, again, well, almost again, it just was reminding me about the effectiveness of that last battle scene at Toad Hall, that we had just seen, in the Wind in the Willows section, where this is just fast and a chase and action scene that's just fast and furious, and it's just so fun to see in animation because they can just do so much. But there's all these ones, where the horse is going the wrong way, or Ichabod's sitting backwards on it, or that thing where they on the tree where it like knocks Ichabod off the horse, and at one point he's like riding on the back of the horse with the Headless Horseman, and all
Yeah.
this stuff, and then the reactions of Ichabod's horse. Classic animation with his eyes kind of popping out of his head. I mean, it's almost like it's Looney Tunes, kind of a Warner Brothers thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean that as a compliment. It's just so fast moving and fun. And yet, again, super scary too, because the Headless Horseman really is I think horrifying.
Yeah, very very scary, and it's very dark in the way it
Yeah.
uses the orange of the pumpkin
Yes.
head very effectively. Yeah, I really really like it. So yeah, so it's very fun, and that's sort of the end of the short. I forgot to look up my ranking. Just one sec. Okay, my last ranking, I had Ichabod and Mr. Toad at 33.
Okay.
And I had Winnie the Pooh at 34. And Melody Time actually at 32.
Oh, nice.
Because I love Johnny Appleseed.
I have, Johnny Appleseed is so great. I have the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh at 34. Just as a side note, but I have it at 20. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad for me is at 29 in my last
yeah,
ranking.
it's about the same. Pretty close.
Yeah, so it's close.
Cool. Great. And we got some comments on our Twitter about this one. Let me pull it open. From Kyle Vox, he says, both striking featurettes and ones that dabble in a grayer sense of morality than usual, a welcome change of pace. Wind in the Willows is charming, good-humored, Sleepy Hollow, atmospheric, and appropriately Halloween-esque. Creepy, they pair together nicely. Alexander Robinson, he says, I've seen this version of Wind and the Willows many times, but I never saw this version of Sleepy Hollows. And Alexander Robinson, his channel, he is doing a Disney canon rewatch as we speak. He's in the package era. He just posted his episode on his review of Make Mine Music just barely today as of recording of this. So definitely, I'll put a link down. People should go and support his
check that out.
Reviews. Yeah, which is awesome. So CJ the horse, he says Cyril Proudbottom the horse is his favorite.
I love Cyril too. I don't know if I expressed that enough.
Yeah,
I love Cyril.
And Jacob Martin, he says, genuinely enjoy both of them. Prefer Sleepy Hollow, of course, but both are packaged well together, and it's easily the best packaged film of the era. And then Brett Review, he says, I enjoy both, but prefer Sleepy Hollow story. That song gets played on Halloween night every year. So there we go. That's some of the thoughts going on.
Excellent.
Yes. So we are actually not going to do the random number generator this time because our next review is going to be of the new film Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yes.
And that's going to be very, very exciting.
Excited to see a brand new film from Walt Disney Animation Studios.
We haven't been able to review a new film on this series in the canon since Frozen 2. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get to talk about one.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll look forward to that. And let us know what you think of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad in the comment section. We would love to hear your thoughts, and make sure you're following us at Disney Talking on Twitter. And Stanford, where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at Stanford Clark, and I have a movie podcast and blog at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And check out the Hallmarkies podcast. Got lots of good interviews and stuff going on over there. So again, let us know your thoughts, and we will, we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.